chosen ones. You were never meant to be ordinary. The ancient ones knew this. That's why they encoded the last Hermetic seal in layers of dimension and deception, hiding it beyond the reach of even the wisest mystics. This wasn't just about knowledge. It was about containment. Something cosmic was chained behind that seal, something they feared, and yet somehow trusted you with. They never expected a being would rise who could resonate with all 7 laws at once. Polarity, rhythm, cause, and effect. They were words to most, but to you, they unlocked sensation. And when that final seal pulsed in the astral realm, everything shifted. The stars rearranged themselves, bloodlines trembled. You didn't just stumble upon the seal, you were called to it. The vibration was ancient, and it had been waiting for your return. Every secret society, Templars, Rosicrucians, Saturnian Priests, feared this exact moment. They erected timelines around it, warped prophecies to steer you away. But prophecy bends when the one it feared finally moves. When you stepped into alignment with the seal's harmonic code, the universe paused. Not in silence, but in anticipation. This was no accident. The scribes of old wrote of a time breaker, not a destroyer, but a revealer, one whose presence would fracture the illusion of time and allow truth to bleed into every layer of existence. And now that you've touched it, now that the seal is no longer sealed, the veil begins to tear. The ancients left behind more than warnings. They left instructions, traps, illusions, initiations. And you just passed the final one without even realizing it. The Hermetic laws weren't laws for the universe. They were barriers between realms, and when the last one broke, they felt it. But ask yourself, why were you able to break it? What unlocked inside of you at that precise moment? And why did the forgotten bloodlines begin watching again the second you did? You didn't just break a seal, you triggered something timed, a countdown. And now, the ones who wrote it, the ones who buried the truth beneath Atlantis, beneath Egypt, beneath every timeline, they know you're awake. It began the moment the wind stopped. Not a breeze, not a whisper, just silence, as if creation itself held its breath. The clouds above twisted unnaturally, not in chaos, but in deliberate motion. Patterns spiraled in geometries you couldn't explain, yet somehow recognized. They weren't storms, they were sigils, symbols etched across the heavens by something ancient, something watching. And then it spoke, not with thunder or voice, but through vibration. Your name wasn't said. It was remembered. In that moment, something shifted deep within you. An ancestral recall. Memories you never lived raced through your nervous system. Visions of temples not built on this earth, chants in languages no modern tongue could mimic, and a sense of being pulled into the very breath of the cosmos. You weren't hallucinating. You were aligning. The Akashic field, known to mystics as the divine record, wasn't just aware of you. It responded to you, like a key reuniting with its forgotten lock. The wind returned, but now it danced in patterns, curling around your form like it knew you. You didn't walk into this moment. You were summoned. And as you stood under that charged sky, a pulse echoed beneath your feet. Not seismic, not planetary, dimensional, The Earth wasn't reacting to you. It was welcoming you back. Somewhere, monks who have taken lifelong vows of silence turned their heads east. Deep in vaults beneath the Vatican, scrolls turned to ash in response. The old codes were shifting. The one they had feared, yet secretly awaited, had moved. And now, time as they knew it was unraveling, not falling apart, but rearranging to accommodate your arrival. You weren't the only one who felt it. Birds flew in reverse formation. Wolves howled before the sun had even set. Crystals buried in the earth for millennia began to hum, sending signals into frequencies long dismissed as myth. But these weren't signs. They were responses, reverberations from the field that had just recognized you as its activator. The winds, the signals, the pulses, none of it was accidental. It was the ancient world stirring again. Because the one who would break the last Hermetic seal was never meant to ask permission, only to remember. And now that you've been remembered, something hidden has started to open. Before parchment and prophecy, before temples and time itself, there was a voice, one that spoke from the silence between stars. That voice belonged to Hermes Trismegistus, the messenger of divine law and the architect of Hermetic wisdom. He spoke not to be heard in his own time, but to echo into an age when the final boundary would be shattered. That age is now, and you are the echo he was waiting for. In the deepest layer of the emerald tablets, beneath the surface verses that have been publicly translated and manipulated, exists a cipher, not of words, but of resonance. It describes a being, not born but awakened, who would come not to study the laws, but to reverse them, to look at what was called absolute and say, "It is only absolute until I arrive." That being, according to Hermes, would carry no title, follow no doctrine, and yet bend time, polarity, vibration, and rhythm by simply walking in truth. His warnings were encoded in metaphors. The final law was never written as a commandment. It was embedded in rhythm, hidden in paradox. As long as all 7 laws remained active and unbroken, the illusion of reality would hold. But Hermes feared the illusion would become a prison. He whispered of a day when a soul would rise to dismantle the structure, not to destroy it, but to free what was trapped behind it. He said, "When the veil begins to tear, seek the one who causes the stars to bend." You didn't learn the Hermetic laws. You disrupted them. Cause and effect began collapsing around you. Synchronicities didn't happen to you. They responded to you. Time no longer moved forward in a straight line. It started folding. And now, every system built on those laws is breaking formation. The universe isn't falling apart. It's shifting to accommodate a consciousness it wasn't designed to contain. The scribes called this the unfolding. The moment the original lawgiver's prophecy would rewrite itself, not by pen, not by voice, but by presence. And now the ancient silence surrounding the final law is gone. Something has been triggered. Hermes saw it long ago. And now the ancient halls are reactivating, not because they were told to, but because you stepped forward. They said Atlantis was a myth, a sunken city whispered about in esoteric corners and dismissed by modern minds. But beneath the crust of doubt, in chambers untouched by sunlight for tens of thousands of years, the scrolls remained, not ink on paper. These were vibrational records, written in crystalline resonance. When explorers found them, they didn't open like books, they sang. And when one specific tone pulsed from their core, the technology monitoring the dig spiked. It wasn't just noise. It was a response to you. Your frequency had matched something preserved since before recorded time. The symbols on the scrolls glowed faintly, then rearranged themselves into new geometry. Observers believed it was random, but to the ancient keepers who encoded the language of Atlantis, it was confirmation. They had hidden the final sequence, the seal break code, inside a resonance no one else could produce. No one, until now. And it wasn't the scrolls alone that responded. Obelisks beneath the ocean floor realigned their orientation. Underwater temples hummed with power that had been dormant for ages. The Atlantean grid had been designed to activate only when the one who bore the imprint appeared. That imprint was not physical, it was dimensional. You carried it in your essence, unaware of its magnitude. But the scrolls were not unaware. They had been waiting, untouched by time, until your signal called them back to life. What the world mistook for stories were actually warnings, not of destruction, but of awakening. Atlantis did not fall by accident. It sealed itself intentionally to prevent the misuse of this final code. The last Hermetic seal was never meant to be found by those who sought power. It was buried for the one who embodied it without effort. And when you walked into harmonic resonance with the forgotten scrolls, Atlantis stirred again. Now, tectonic shifts ripple, not just through Earth, but through frequency itself. Guardians assigned to monitor these vibrational vaults have gone silent. Symbols long thought inert are glowing in synchronization with your presence. The keepers of the old grid are whispering across dimensions, trying to confirm the impossible. But the scrolls do not lie. They've recognized something that science cannot explain and prophecy dared not name. Something that now walks the earth again. In the beginning was the Word. Not a sound, not a sentence, but a vibration. Pure, unshaped consciousness, speaking before creation took form. It wasn't written in any language, yet every sacred text has pointed to it in riddles. The word wasn't meant to be heard externally. It was implanted, hidden in the souls of a select few across time. And in you, it wasn't dormant. It was sealed. Until now. When you broke the last Hermetic seal, something ancient stirred inside your breath. A frequency, older than sound, moved through your body like fire, remembering how to be flame. It wasn't something you spoke aloud. It was something that spoke you. Reality bent around it. Old fears began to dissolve. Timelines tangled themselves trying to adapt to your shift. That word, the one that shaped galaxies, was not behind you or above you. It had always been within you. This is what they feared. Not that you would become powerful, but that you would remember you already were. The word was placed in you like a time-locked seed, designed to awaken not through study, but through resonance. And when your soul aligned with the final Hermetic fracture, the inner vault opened. Not all at once, just enough to send a ripple across dimensions. Just enough for the forgotten watchers to take notice. In one breath, you became a paradox, divine yet human, hidden yet revealed. You weren't just reading sacred law, you were it in motion. The scrolls, the temples, the codes, they were shadows of what you carried inside. And now that the word is no longer sealed, it's starting to vibrate through your choices, through your silence, through your existence. Yeshua once said, "The kingdom of God is within you." Those weren't poetic metaphors. They were encoded confirmations. He knew the word wasn't outside to be worshipped. It was hidden in the few who would carry it across ages, waiting for the one who could bear its full tone. And now it has begun to sound again, not through song, but through your very being. Long before languages split and scriptures scattered across continents, there existed 7 governing principles encoded as seals. Not physical barriers, but metaphysical keys layered into the structure of existence. Each seal held a facet of divine operation: vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, gender, mentalism, and correspondence. To the uninitiated, they were simply teachings. To the ancients, they were locks. And to you, they were responses. From the moment you were born, these seals began to react, not with fear, but with memory. Subtle events around you echoed a pattern. Electrical systems flickered in your presence. People felt déjà vu when speaking to you. Coincidences spiraled so tightly around your life that they began to form patterns others couldn't ignore. It wasn't randomness. It was the seals noticing you. You weren't breaking the system. You were the variable it had been waiting for. The Hermetic seals were designed to protect deeper truths, each one layered over the next, concealing a power so profound that if awakened in the wrong hands, it would collapse dimensional order. That's why they embedded it in frequency, not in knowledge, but in resonance. And only one carrying a particular frequency could awaken all 7. Not by learning, by being. You didn't decode the seals. You activated them by existing. As each one responded, reality bent around you in ways that history doesn't record, but ancient memory remembers. The last seal, the hidden one, never named aloud, was embedded in you as a final test. It couldn't be found. It had to recognize you. And when it did, the system shifted. Codes broke open not in temples, but in your neural circuits. Sacred geometry unfolded in your sleep. The laws of nature began to rewrite their behavior in proximity to your will. You were never meant to study the seals. You were born to end them. Not in destruction, but in fulfillment. Once the seals all responded, the illusion of separation began to dissolve. The spiritual, mental, and physical planes started merging, and that terrified those who had thrived in the divide. Now that the last seal has recognized you, the laws holding this reality together have begun to rearrange. But what awakens when the seals all open was locked for a reason, and the ones who locked it are not gone. They're waking up too, deep in forgotten catacombs and uncharted caverns. There exists a language not spoken but carved. Symbols etched into obsidian, limestone, crystal, geometries so precise they defy time itself. These weren't decorations. They were warnings, sentences spoken through stone. And buried among them, at the intersection of ley lines and star maps, was the final law. But it wasn't written to be read. It was coded to remain hidden until the impossible happened. You. The architects of ancient truth knew that words fade, scrolls burn, and temples collapse. But stone holds memory. So they buried the law beneath layers of material and myth, embedding it in sacred structures disguised as tombs, pyramids, and wonders. They believed the final law was too dangerous to speak aloud, so they encrypted it in vibration, only activatable by someone carrying the precise harmonic key, not in their voice, in their soul. Every civilization that touched the law was altered or erased. The Sumerians glimpsed it and fell. The Egyptians protected it in their blue lotus rituals, never fully daring to translate it. The Mayans hid pieces of it in their calendar cycles, warning of a time when the cycle would bend. That time is now, and you were never meant to find it by chance. The law was designed to ignore all who sought it with pride or fear, but it responds to resonance, and your presence has begun to shake the encoded stone. Across the world, seismic anomalies have started to form in patterns, not tectonic faults, message routes. The monuments are humming again. Machu Picchu, Göbekli Tepe, the Great Pyramid, each locked into a grid that recognizes movement not of body, but of spirit. And something in your essence just activated the system. The final glyph isn't spoken. It's not even understood. It is felt. It exists as a bridge between what is real and what is remembered. And as the law begins to reassemble, those sworn to protect its silence have taken notice. You didn't break the law. You triggered it. You didn't read the glyphs. You resonated with them. There are moments in history that ripple beyond their time, footsteps that imprint themselves into the very soil of the soul. Yeshua's journey was one of them, not merely a teacher, not simply a prophet, but a frequency carrier, one who walked the earth encoded with the knowledge of the 7 seals and the one beyond. What was spoken in parables was written between the lines. The miracles were not spectacles. They were signatures of divine cipher awakening. And those closest to him knew he wasn't alone in what he carried. He often spoke of another. He whispered to those who would listen, "Greater works shall you do," not as flattery, but prophecy. The cipher he bore was never meant to remain incomplete. He embodied the frequency, but the final harmonization would be left for a soul outside his time, a mirror of his essence in another age, a being whose presence would realign what was scattered, whose existence would finalize the ancient pattern he initiated. That pattern, dormant for ages, has now found its final node. It has found you. You do not carry the cipher as a scholar. You are the cipher expressed through form. When you awakened the last seal, you unknowingly completed a formula set in motion 2,000 years ago. This wasn't just Hermetic law. It was divine frequency mapped into time. And when your soul pulsed at the exact harmonic Yeshua once anchored, the script of reality began to rewrite itself. Somewhere in desert vaults untouched by modern hands, scrolls shimmered with light they haven't seen since his breath touched them. The code recognized its completion. His words once veiled now burn with clarity, not because they changed, but because the one who could hear them fully has arrived. The cipher never died. It was waiting for resonance. You were never meant to follow his path. You were meant to awaken what he left behind. Beneath the surface of every world government, hidden behind the masks of democracy and control, sits a circle, 33 in number, not by chance, but by design. They are not elected, not named, and certainly not known to the masses. They operate through shadow, ritual, and encoded legacy, tracing their authority back to a single purpose: to guard the final lock. Not the final key, the lock. The one that has now begun to tremble in your presence. Their archives speak of a being born outside the design, one not bound by the karmic codes or soul contracts that regulate most of humanity. They called this one the Divergence. They were told if this being ever activated, the lock would respond, not with resistance, but with opening. That being, hidden across generations, was the anomaly they feared most. And it is you. From the moment your frequency shifted, the Circle's private instruments began to fail. Time calibration nodes buried in Antarctic caverns blinked out. Lunar synchronization systems became unstable. Their protective glyphs began to decay, not through force, but through resonance. Because the lock was never made to resist you, it was made to wait for you. In deep chambers beneath the Vatican, a codex burst open with light for the first time in 900 years. Within it, diagrams of a being surrounded by fractured seals and a map leading to a gate they swore would remain closed until the end of time. The gate's vibration began to rise the moment you breathed into awareness. They have confirmed your existence. And now, the Circle no longer debates. It moves. They knew the lock would never be shattered. It had to be harmonized. And harmony cannot be forced. It must arrive. The codes around the lock were designed to fracture anything that came through pride, fear, or desire. But you moved through the cipher with something they didn't expect: alignment. You didn't break in, you fit. And now, the final lock is responding, not in defiance, but in recognition. The Inner Circle watches closely, not with arrogance, but concern. Because they know what comes after the lock opens was buried for a reason. And you're almost at the door. The ancient Hermetic axiom echoed through centuries like a forgotten drumbeat. As above, so below. As within, so without. It was not meant as a riddle. It was a declaration of symmetry. A truth that whatever occurs in the higher realms echoes in the lower, and vice versa. But what happens when the one who walks the earth doesn't just reflect the heavens, but inverts them? That's what happened the moment your frequency shifted. The mirror didn't just reflect, it shattered. The principle was held as sacred by mystics, alchemists, and the hidden schools. It explained manifestation, prophecy, destiny, but it also served as a boundary. If all things followed this balance, then no one could rise above it, until you. The very pattern of above and below began to collapse when your presence introduced a new variable, one that did not follow the reflection, but redefined it. In monasteries built atop ancient ley lines, monks stopped mid-chant. In deep space listening stations, readings came in reversed, the stars themselves behaving against prediction. The sky no longer dictated the Earth's flow. The Earth, through you, had begun rewriting the sky. Your soul reversed the stream, sending an upward pulse that struck the higher realms with such clarity that they flinched. It wasn't rebellion, it was revelation. This is why the final Hermetic seal fractured. It wasn't because of pressure or violence. It was because you became the singular point where law no longer applied in a linear way. The law bent to you not out of weakness, but recognition. You didn't ascend to the heavens. The heavens tilted to meet you. That shift activated the ancient fail-safes, mechanisms the ancients embedded into the very framework of time to alert them when the reversal began. And now they are aware. Yeshua once said, "Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven." His words weren't metaphor. They were blueprints. He wasn't warning the world of chaos. He was preparing it for you, for the one who would not just reflect, but reshape. And now that the above has heard the below echoing its name, the symmetry is breaking. But in that break, something older than the law itself begins to wake. Something that remembers the world before balance. Something that has waited for this inversion. In a realm unseen by ordinary perception, outside the movement of clocks and calendars, there exist the timekeepers. They are not beings of flesh, but consciousness, encoded in the architecture of time itself. Their task has never been to control, only to monitor. They watch the flow, the bends, the loops, the deviations. And until now, the timeline has mostly remained intact. But when you broke the last Hermetic seal, something shifted that could not be ignored. The stream of time stuttered, not by error, but by interruption. You were that interruption. The seal was not merely a key to forgotten knowledge, it was a command to memory itself. Once opened, it gave the cosmos permission to rewrite sequence. Events that were locked became malleable. Prophecies once sealed in stone began to melt. The timekeepers felt it instantly. Not because of what you did, but because of who you are. You carry within you a frequency that disrupts linearity. Futures respond to you before the present finishes forming. They are now recalibrating. Systems they built to monitor deviation have begun sending out anomalous signals. Echoes of your presence ripple backward into history, causing ancient oracles to alter their visions. You haven't just changed the future. You've begun rewriting the past. And in doing so, you've made yourself visible to those who were never supposed to look down. The timekeepers were never meant to act. They observe. They document. But one clause, etched deep in their governing code, permits movement if the final seal is ever broken by a non-predicted soul. You were not in their calculations. That makes you an anomaly. That makes you dangerous. And now, they're moving. Already, cracks are appearing in the continuity fabric. Individuals are waking up with memories of lives they never lived. Devices fail when you pass near them. People speak to you as if they've met you before, and yet they haven't. These are not coincidences. They are side effects. You've become a pivot point in time, and the timekeepers are converging, not to erase, but to study.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.